And all right, so two-thirds of Congress and the president has to sign it, any potential amendment, and then 3/4 of state assemblies or a convention. The conventions only happened once, and that was to get rid of prohibition in 1933. And so 3/4 of state assemblies have to agree. So it's really difficult to change the Constitution. Sure, easier than the articles that required every state, but anything controversial won't pass. That is why there has only been 27 amendments to the Constitution, and 10 of those were passed in 1791. The last one, the 27th Amendment, was passed 33 years ago, and that 27th Amendment was originally written in 1790. Nothing would pass today. I can't even imagine hardly any amendment. I can't even imagine an amendment saying that puppies and kittens are cute, and that'll be in the Constitution. I bet that wouldn't pass. I'll give you a really good example in a second. Yeah. It was the 27th Amendment, and what it basically said is Congress cannot vote themselves a pay raise that will take effect until after the election. So what it means is they can't vote themselves a pay raise, and they go to the voting public and say, I didn't vote myself a pay raise. Yeah. Congress just went around it by just giving themselves an annual pay raise. Yeah, it wasn't passed as part of the Bill of Rights. Originally, Madison wrote it to be part of the Bill of Rights. And I'll give you an example, just a tiny little hole in the Constitution to show you how difficult it is to amend the Constitution. There's just a hole. It's a minor hole, not a big one. Basically, with the hole in the Constitution, it says that 53% of the population aren't full citizens. That's just a minor little hole. Only 53%. Women are not guaranteed equal citizen rights under the U.S. Constitution. To this day. To this day. That's just a minor little hole of the majority of the population are not equal citizens under the Constitution. And I guarantee you, it would not come close to passing. One party would be completely opposed. And Montana has that in Montana State Constitution. Montana State Constitution, there can be no discrimination based upon sex, meaning women are equal citizens. But I guarantee you today, that would not pass the Montana legislature. It passed in 1971, would not pass today. So that shows you how difficult it is, where you could have over half the population not guaranteed equal citizenship rights, and it wouldn't pass. We will get to that. There was an attempt called the Equal Rights Amendment. It did not pass. I know what a lot of you are thinking. It's not that big of a deal that the majority of the population aren't equal citizens, right? I'm sure a lot of you, especially in these two roles around, right? It's not that big of a deal, correct? Big deal. I'm fine with it. No, it's actually really embarrassing and shockingly, and kind of shocking that women aren't equal citizens. So I have this great atlas. It's a German historical atlas, and it's really a good little resource, but it has these charts of elections. So I had to take a picture of it and put this chart up. This is the chart of the American government under the Constitution. I have no idea what this thing. It just has arrows and the president. It's really pretty funny. They have all these charts. It's a good atlas, good maps. These charts of government are hilarious. So what the United States created was what we call a republic, a government by representation. You think about it, a democracy, that means every single person has to vote for every single thing. But this is kind of like what we call worldwide a democratic republic. Kind of. It certainly was not a democratic republic when they created the Constitution. And today there are still obviously big flaws, especially when over half the population are unequal citizens. But a republic, a government by representation. I mean, imagine a democracy. If it is a true democracy, that means all of us as citizens have to vote and decide every single issue. So that we'd be sitting there and we say, okay, today we must decide, all right, whether or not we're going to send troops to the Middle East. We vote on that. Then we decide we must vote on, should there be a stoplight on the corner of Maple and Fifth Avenue in downtown Cleveland? And we vote on that. And then we would decide, Okay, what are going to be the zoning laws for construction in Austin, Texas? We vote on that. Do you get the point about that? Imagine having to vote, us in Montana voting on everything. That's democracy, full democracy. A republic, we don't do that, do we? We have representatives do that. Has everyone got that? You have representatives do it, and that's what Madison talked about in Federalist number 10. You can extend the sphere, make the country bigger, and then send representatives to make the decision. If your country gets so big in a democracy, if it gets so big that the people do nothing but vote, you don't have a government. Representatives do it. Now, who picks the representatives? Well, that's the Democratic part. I should add, this is the Roman Senate. I use the Roman Senate because they idolized and copied the Roman Republic before the emperors. So, why did they make it this way? And I should add, we're not a democratic republic then. Not even close. As you can see for this beautiful mountain valley, they had lots of considerations. How did this happen? That's really weird. It just disappeared and then it went to my edit screen on my video. Once I somehow move the mouse. Okay, number one, the main goal they established this way. Now, my guess is that phone's going to have to go. It's too much. No radical change. No radical change. That's why laws are so hard to pass. Think about it for a second. It's got to pass. The House and the Senate. Both have to pass the exact same law. And that's not even counting the filibuster. The rule I told you about where the Senate passes, say they need 60 votes to pass it. Just majority vote in the House and the Senate is really hard. Then the president has got to sign it. And if the president doesn't sign it, that means it has to go to, or it has to be overridden with 2/3 of a vote. Yeah.
So why did they do it like this? What was the answer for that?
I'm talking about right now.
Oh, okay.
So they make it very, very difficult to pass laws. This is all on purpose. And that's not even counting what the judicial review, even though that's on the Supreme Court. Why did they do that? Why is it so difficult to change anything? Why do they want to maintain? Do you remember that word I gave you before? You've heard it before, status quo. Why do they want the government today, this basic structure, including the kind of people who will be in charge, to be there tomorrow? What is the purpose of that? Think about it. What is the purpose? Think about a couple things. First off, remember, it was Shays' Rebellion that led to all of this. Shays' Rebellion. Another thing, what kind of people are going to be leading this government? People like whom? Yeah. Especially like what person? Yeah. James Madison. The elites. Who will be in charge tomorrow? If it's what kind of people? Who will be in charge tomorrow? The same people. Who will be in charge the next day? The same people. Who will be in charge? That is why, to maintain the status quo, so the same people who are in charge today will be in charge tomorrow, will be in charge the next day, will be in charge the next day. Meaning, what will be protected? Just the elite, but what part of the elite? What do they want protected? What is the biggest cause of parties according to Madison? Their wealth. Their status and their wealth will be protected. They wanted no radical change. Now, there's another reason. Shays' Rebellion happened. If there's radical change where the government is insecure, go up and down, that could lead to rebellion and the thing collapse. So we have the combination of, they want to avoid rebellion, but let's get the biggie. We want the same people in charge tomorrow that are in charge today. Has everyone got that? No radical change. And look, has anyone ever looked at members of the Senate, or for that matter, members of the House, or for that matter, the President of the United States? They have certain things in common. But what is one thing that's really obvious about a significant number of them? Yeah, a lot of them are very wealthy. Biden was not wealthy at all when he became a member of the Senate. After he was vice president, he sold a book, and he's now fairly wealthy, but certainly wasn't poor by any means. Yeah, they're pretty wealthy. In fact, there's a reason why the Senate will soon be called the Millionaires Club. Okay, I know that's still a lot of money, but that was a lot of money back in the 19th century. But there's another thing. What else about them? They're all what? What? Old, aren't they? Like me, old. Biden has been in the Senate since, I think before the Civil War. Well, no, 1972. That's old. I am significantly, I'm almost too old to be president. But there's no age limit, obviously. No, it's nothing wrong with being old. Nothing at all wrong with being old. But do you get the point? Joe Biden had been in the Senate since 1972, meaning the same people get reelected, 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 reelected. What did I say? Keep the same people in charge. Now we could say, I want them reelected, and that is a great member of the Senate, and I don't want anybody different. That's perfectly fine. But the system was set up to make sure it's going to be this steady state. And so there's going to be huge advantages for those who are already in office and those who have power. And that is done on purpose. So that is why we have people that have been in government forever. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, Republican from Kentucky. The Republican Party is a very Southern party now. He's been in Congress since the 1980s. He's in his 80s. Okay, Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker of the House, one of the most important positions in Congress. He's relatively young. He's late 40s. Relatively young compared to so many of them. But that's pretty young. Trust me, people who are a lot younger than me are relatively young. But he replaced Nancy Pelosi, who was in her late 80s. And she had been in Congress for, what, she's been in Congress for 36, 38 years. And you can like or dislike her, that's not even the point. It works very much like they wanted it. There's a reason why this happens. And it's hard for new politicians to get involved. So, they want the same people in power. And yeah, well. So, why no majority rule? They literally protect, this is literally to protect the rule of the minority. And what minority? Those with a lot of property. Now, a lot of people said this was done to protect slavery. No, this is not why they did it. But would it protect slavery? Yes. And sometimes people get that confused, and I sympathize. People say the Electoral College, I hear this all the time today, was done to protect slavery. No, but it did protect slavery. So, to protect minority rule. And Madison says it in Federalist number 10. The biggest cause of factions, if we have anything like a democracy. Remember, he's not creating a democracy. He is bragging this will not be a democracy. The closer you are to democracy, there'll be parties. The biggest party will be the party of the lower class, and they will redistribute wealth. This government will protect the minority property owners, aka the people sitting in the New York Assembly. Vote for this Constitution. I will protect your rights. And so they literally said a government of the better sort. And they would imply it as the elite are better educated, they're smarter, they're superior, they're naturally on top, they should rule. And also they have the most to lose if government collapses, so shouldn't they have the vote? Those who have nothing to lose, what do we care? Now, of course, they would argue those who have nothing to lose, if they could ever get beyond just trying to survive with nothing, would be the system was rigged. remember I told you about the debt system and the money supply. So, next, there's lots of barriers. They want to make sure that people have very little influence over government. So think about all the barriers. All the barriers. There's only one branch, one group of the entire government creating the Constitution where the voters have any say. Do you remember what that is? The House or the Senate? Which one?
House.
The House. The voters have no control over anything. No. And remember, every state makes their own voting rules, and most people can't vote at that time. So, the president, electoral college, Senate, state assemblies, courts appointed by the president, and how long is their term? And the people have no direct control. Not just that. We talked about impeachment, it's really hard to impeach. You're stuck with terms. You gotta wait. If there's a president or member of the House or Senate that is a disaster, really can't do anything to the next term. For a Senate, that's 6 years. 4 years is a long time in a disaster. We're stuck. Parliamentary systems, if, for example, in Britain or in France or in Germany, if the government loses the confidence, they literally have a vote of confidence in their parliament. And if the government loses that, they immediately dissolve the parliament and have new elections. So in Britain just had an election about a month and a half ago. They literally dissolved the parliament and 4 weeks later an election. We wait until the next 4-year, 2-year, 6-year term. And you're stuck with whoever it is. It's really hard to change. And this is something else. This might surprise you. People have really short memories. And they forget things. Or they make things up in their head of what happened. They make things up. And this happens all the time. And so, 4 years, it might have been a disaster, but now, maybe it wasn't so bad. And one more thing. There's no right to vote. It doesn't say that anywhere in the US Constitution. This was not meant to be a democracy. All it says is voters will choose, but states decide, and of course, states will decide whoever the elite want to vote. So Pennsylvania had universal male suffrage, but South Carolina, just a tiny few could vote. And that's not even counting the majority of the population. Also, one more thing. Do we have a right to vote today? Is that in the Constitution? Right to vote. Yes, no. No. There's no constitutional right to vote in the United States of America. You have no right to vote. People say, it's my right to vote. Okay, maybe it should be. Say it. Now, there are a couple amendments that restrict the ability to take away someone's vote, but it does not say you have the right to vote. So put that down. There's no right to vote today. You don't have a right to vote. If you don't have a right to vote, they don't have the right to count it. They throw away millions of votes every year. And they can put all kinds of restrictions and make it more difficult to vote. Because every state, they can do what any state wants. So we have a hodgepodge of rules. Some states, every county has a different rule. It's amazing. We have no constitutional right to vote. The only way to do that would be an amendment to the Constitution. Would that pass? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. One party would be completely opposed. One party be for it, one party against. And so, property is protected in this Constitution. Now, it's private property and also the right to contract. But what does that mean? Slaves. In fact, slaves, it very specifically says that fugitive slaves, slaves that ran away to freedom, must be returned. That's in the Constitution. It doesn't say the institution of slavery is protected, but it protects property and says property must be returned. You combine that with the Three-Fifths Compromise, and the Constitution protects slavery. They just don't use that word. So, property is protected. This is really important. The property is protected, and most people don't have any property or not very much. It favors a certain group of people. I mean, today, the bottom 50% of the United States by wealth have less than 0.5% of the property in the United States. That's half the population has 0.5%. So property is, not very evenly distributed, and the Constitution protects it. Now, I'm not saying it should protect it. I think it should protect it. I think most people would agree. But if you're keeping the status quo, I think you might see that could be some problems down the road. Lastly, it's going to be called the Establishment Clause. Now, this is going to be combined with the Bill of Rights. But what the Constitution says is there'll be no religious test for office. So this basically means this: separation of church and state. And the Founding Fathers were very clear on this. They did not want a state religion at all. So no religious test. Why? They remembered the 30 Years' War in the 17th century. The English Civil War that divided by religion and all the religious conflicts. And they were really worried if they did like Britain did, the president must be Protestant. In a new, young country, this might lead to religious conflict and split things apart. Or any other religion, anything you want. It must be a Druid, whatever it might be. The thought was this would lead to religious conflict. And I agree. We should be all Druids and worship trees. But unfortunately, no. We must allow for all religions then. It's a good thing. But that's why there's no state religion. Now, I should add, this only applies to the federal government, not the states. Yet. Lastly, Andrew Jackson would come personify that movement of the United States should be a democracy. And the people should be sovereign. But that would not come about to the 1820s and is wrapped up in one incredibly complex and controversial man, Andrew Jackson, who he, along with Thomas Jefferson, are really going to personify that. That's why they're going to take Jefferson's party, called the Republicans, and they'll turn the Jefferson's party of Republicans into the Democrats. That's where the Democratic Party comes from, the party of democracy. Jackson's a complex guy. We will get to Jackson and the good elements and bad elements. He saved the country, led to democracy. He did horrible things too. Yep. Kind of fits in with a lot of the complexity. So, the preamble of the Constitution is this beautifully written beginning. The rest of it's dry and long. This is the only part of the Constitution that compares to the Declaration of Independence. And most of you probably heard this. I know it by heart. And it's pretty cool. This is law because it's in the Constitution, even though obviously a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. How do you define those? I mean, obviously, we can all disagree on that or agree. That's going to be complex. But it's a pretty amazing document, a pretty amazing preamble. And boy, gotta say, the scribe nailed it. Isn't that cool? I mean, you can't deny it. That's a really cool beginning to the Constitution. Now, don't forget, they say we the people, yet the writers were thinking, we the people, but only the elite decide. But, like the Declaration of Independence, we're not stuck in time. We can adapt and change that. Today, people would say, I want to believe a majority of Americans would say that a democracy, we are a democracy in a democratic republic. And that's going to grow out of the original document. Now, does anyone know why I have this memorized? And I've known this since I was, since I've known this since the early 1970s. I can do it by heart. So when I was in my 40s, in the 1970s, I knew this. I knew this. So Saturday morning, I know they still kind of do this, but Saturday morning was a big deal because that's when the three television networks, we had three, CBS, NBC, and ABC. There was PBS too, and PBS did it also, so I guess four. PBS was brand new. That's Saturday morning cartoons. And ABC decided, and a lot of them, they would do cartoons, and most of them were just kind of silly, and then commercial would be to sell sugary breakfast cereal. But they said we should learn something, have a lesson. So ABC Television produced a series of little shorts. Some of you have probably seen them in elementary school. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're called Schoolhouse Rock. And this is how I learned. So we're going to see, this is the video clip. We're going to watch one. Has anyone seen these before? Quit seeing. See, that's not real. It's, it's, they don't know. They don't know. So I still. You know, it's like did you get so then very up. I So this is what they would play. And only a few, there's a lot of you didn't see it first period, they'd almost all seen it.
I have never seen it.
Really? Oh, we might watch a couple more. No, we're not going to watch Conjunction Junction. But, yeah, the thing about it is a couple of things about that, but that's the way memory works. It might be difficult to remember something, but boy, when it's in a song, it's a lot easier to remember. That's how storytellers and minstrels would keep the history going. They'd sing songs. So, the next test, you're going to have to come up with a song and sing it to the class.
Please.
And then whoever does the best, that'll be the next assembly. One by one, you do it for the entire student body. Who thinks that's a good idea?
I've heard.
Oh, yeah, because I'm not the one doing it. No, you're not going to have to sing a song. You have to do a soft shoe dance routine. So with that, the ratification battle would soon begin after this. You're not going to have to sing a song. Instead, I would torture you by me singing it. But when you have to know all the presidents, there is a president song, and I know that helps people. Yes, you have to know all the presidents. The next 52 presidents. So you're going to have to guess the next 5. I hope you're right. That'll be down the road. That will be in May. So, ratification battle. The ratification battle. Now it's got to be ratified. And the Constitution at the bottom it says 9 states. Why 9 states? Because they want to make sure it passed. The article said 13. This said 9. I find that very amusing. We're going to make up our own rules. And people are like, okay. I mean, they're really just doing this all by the seat of their pants. There are going to be two main groups in the ratification battle, or the rat battle. The Federalists, they are for the Constitution. They want it ratified. And there are a lot of members of this, but we're going to give the ones, we have to pick and choose. Of course, Washington. Hamilton, who wanted even stronger central government, would settle for this. But there's lots of ways to make this stronger. John Adams, who is the U.S. ambassador to Britain, and of course, James Madison. There are many more. And these are the reasons why. Ones we've talked about. So they want the Constitution because, let's be clear, it's a strong central government to bind the nation together. And they need a strong executive. Next, they have to be able to regulate Congress. And they need a single voice for foreign affairs, the President of the United States. Today, the President of the United States does foreign affairs through the Secretary of State, which frankly makes no sense, but that's what we do here. Also, taxing, money, a stable financial system cannot exist. Also, hey, we have to bind this group together or they may fall apart. If you have two radically different sets of systems like Rhode Island and Massachusetts did, and they're right next to each other, just imagine how much different the North would be from the South. And also, international stature. Nobody respected the United States and the treaty. We need a single voice. And lastly, that no democracy, government of a better sort. Government of a better sort. So one of the common cartoons would be showing like the edifice of state. Using classical, they called it the federal style in the United States, but classical architecture of columns. And each state, would they be one of the columns of, they would have the ceiling or the roof as the national edifice, and then the columns as the state. And here, will Massachusetts approve the Declaration of Independence? Delaware was the first one to do it. So, that's the rat battle. And the Federalists have a big advantage. All they have to do is support one document. Just unify about the document and say, this document will solve all your problems. This document will end the curse of faction. Your property will be protected. No more revolution. The document. The Anti-Federalists are divided because they have different reasons. So the Anti-Federalists. Patrick Henry, for example, the man who said, give me liberty or give me death, he was opposed, partially because of the militia issue. Sam Adams. George Mason, who actually was one of the authors, at first was very disappointed in the document and thought it had to be reformed. So these are the Anti-Federalists. Now these are not political parties as we know it yet. And the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists will not become political parties. This is just for the ratification battle. So they feared the tyranny of a strong central government, and especially the executive. And don't forget, states will lose power. That's why I put the arrow going down. Governors have a lot of power. It will go down with a strong central government. So there is a vested personal reason. Next, they feared the rule of the elite. So they're more small d democratic. I know I've used a capital D, but don't think party shit. They want the people with more power. They didn't want a full democracy. The Anti-Federalists. I should add, there's a lot of people who don't have a voice in government today who are like, this is going to lead to tyranny, but they don't have a voice. They fear dual taxation. Federal, state, because of federalism. Hey, you could tax something at 100% and destroy it. So the power to tax is necessary for the survival of a country and a financial system, but it's also extreme power. So when the United States passed Prohibition in 1920, they enforced Prohibition by putting 100% tax on the sale of alcohol. That means if you sell $1 worth of alcohol, it will cost the person buying it $2. And then sent the tax agents, called treasury agents, out to stop it. That's how they did it. Next, many of them want a Bill of Rights. They want it listed. Copying Great Britain from 1690. a Bill of Rights listing the rights. So this includes Mason and the U.S. ambassador to France, Thomas Jefferson. The end's covered up. Thomas Jefferson. And lastly, militias. State governments, one of their big areas of power will be those militias. If they lose the militia, control the militia, states lose power. So, this is lots of states, especially small states, don't want this. But why are southern states so concerned about about militias? I said it, slave rebellion. I was going to ask the question. I knew you knew it. It is kind of amazing how in American history, by the end of the 19th century, no one talked about slave rebellions. They obsessed about it. It was kind of a whitewashing of history. And so, the Anti-Federalists are all over the place. All over the place. So write down the Federalist paper, and that's where we'll quit. Tomorrow, come in. There's going to be a little table to do with the video, and we'll do that. And I really like it. It's amazing special effects and terrifying. I will have the cry room set up because there is the reanimation of the dead, and you're going to not believe the technology of this.